Hi everyone, this is T-Max and Service Racing. We're here to just do a video on what we do to rebuild and set up the car after a major event. This is something that we do after the likes of a European Championships or after a long weekend when we feel the car needs to have a major rebuild.
Right, okay, well, I've done a bit already, but what I do first of all is I strip the car completely, including taking the engine out, shock absorbers off. I release the roll bars, so the roll bars aren't connected front and rear. I take off the top deck, I take off the fuel tank, I take out the diff. And then the first thing I do is rebuild the diff, because I want to check the car for tweaks. And you do need the rear shock tower on for that, so I always rebuild the diff first, put it back together with fresh grease in the diff cups, make sure that's all back together, bolt it all up, and then I check for tweaks without the engine in. Make sure that's perfect. If it isn't, retweak it so it's absolutely spot on. Once you know that's right, I put the engine in, and then I always check again just in case the engine has twisted the car. And I'll just give you a quick demonstration on checking a tweak for people that haven't seen it before. You're resting it on the shock tower. And what we're looking for is for the 4 points to be touching. If there's a rock, any kind of rock, it needs tweaking. And as you can see, that's absolutely perfect. So the position I'm in now, engine's in, fuel tank is in, top plate is in, diff's in. The next job I do is I'm going to set the cambers, because I want to get the cambers right so I can check the axle heights. So I'm going to set the cambers here at a 0 setting, and I always do it without the shocks on. It has to go down to the deck anyway. It's a lot easier to do it.
And we also kind of, depending on where and when the next race is, we would judge the camber setting based on that and then set it to how we would for the next race.
So as a start point, I've just decided as a start point to set it at 0. So I have done, when the car was fully stripped, I check every ball joint, top, bottom, internal ones, all the ball joints on the steering. I check all the wheel bearings, I check all the diff bearings, the clutch bearings. I check everything. If anything is anywhere or any play, it gets replaced. So at least you know then, when you built the car, it's back to new.
Actually, as it happens, we did replace a few ball joints on the front end from after the Euros, and we did notice a kind of big difference in setting up the camber after the few ball joints were replaced, because there was so much play. So it does it physically and literally does affect the car handling.
So what I'm doing now is because you press down to set the camber without the shocks, it makes it a lot easier. It's now down to the deck. I want 0 on the camber gauge. As you can see, I've got a little bit there, and there's an equal amount of spaces in both sides, and you'll find the difference is exactly the same. So I'm going to bring that out to 0 just as a start point. Put one very small spacer in, and that is now set at 0. So I now know this side's going to be exactly the same. And as Cormac said, we had a bit of play in the bottom ball joint and the bottom wishbone, and we had a bit of play in those ball joints, and it actually made the cambers different. you needed a different amount of spaces to be equal cambers, and that's purely because of the plain ball joints. But they're all new now. Right, okay, so the camber is now set on the front end. Okay, so we've got the cambers set, and we've got the car up on its setup blocks, and the next job now is the axle heights, and I'm setting them at 67 on the front, 65 in the rear, but we're concentrating on the front at the moment. So it's a lot easier. You can set it without the roll bar, you can tweak the roll bar afterwards. So I'm going to set the axle heights now. I've got this set at 67. This is what we ran in Austria, so we know it's a good start point. So to adjust them, okay, we don't have to worry because there's no roll bar. It makes it really easy. There.
Is it all you're looking for is that tiny bit of scrape?
Yep.
So yeah, so it's just literally
that's exactly right there. And then we do the same on this side. Yeah, so the axle heights are exactly the same now, set at 67 millimeters. Okay, so after we've done the axle heights, we're now going to setting the roll bar. For this purpose, I'm actually just I'm using the medium roll bar, and I'm going to set it on the hardest setting. So I'm just going to make sure there.
So when you say the hardest setting, for those that don't necessarily know, you mean the roll bar being fully in on the front?
Yes,
yeah?
fully the
ball and the cup being fully in, so that there's no movement at all?
Yeah, so that piece there, that one there will be fully in.
Okay.
So it's
and what about the other side?
And that one will be fully in as well, so it's on the hardest setting. That is the softest setting.
Ah,
That
so you're
is the
not.
hardest
So
setting.
that's the thing. People. So you're talking about moving the actual
Yes,
piece
that's
there
right.
rather than moving the actual.
Yeah, the roll bar
in.
has to be in the centre anyway.
Okay.
Now we have, as most people with RS5 know, with these new, we have 3 roll bars. We have a medium roll bar, a soft roll bar, and a hard roll bar for the front. Just for setup purposes, I don't know what we're going to end up with, but I'm using the medium roll bar to start with.
It's a good basis. And how do you know it's right, so to speak, as far as on the front end and moving the...
Right, well, what I'm doing first is I'm doing the outer holder, doing that up tight first, because...
And you do that on obviously both sides, yeah?
Both sides, yeah. That can't be moved, so that has to be in the one position.
Okay. Because as you mentioned before, it's about moving the inside.
That's right.
Okay.
And then I'll explain how we do the tweak. Right, okay, and making sure the outside ones are fully tight on the bottom, and making sure that the roll bar is equal.
When you say equal against that piece?
Yes,
Or
the
equal
same,
in the
same.
centre?
Well, if they're
Or
both the
both.
same there, then they're both the same in the
Okay.
middle. Okay, makes it nice and free. Now, I'm actually going to do this up because I've got the roll bar set in the position I want it, so I can lock up the roll bar on the 2 outside holders. The 2 inside holders, that's how you get your softer hardness. I'm going for the hardness, so I've got them set onto the hardest setting, which is fully in, and I can do up the bottom. Okay, now after you've locked up the holders, the roll bar holders, this is where you tweak. You do all your tweak on the inside.
By the screws on
There's
top
a screw
of the
on the
holders?
top, and there's a screw on the bottom underneath. If you have a look at the bottom, there's an adjusting screw on the bottom as well. So that will bring that roll bar up or down, and that's how you can tweak the two. So first of all, what we do is we just nip them up into where it's sitting.
Is it a little bit like just playing it by ear and having a feel?
It is. You'll see in a minute. I'll exaggerate it, and I'll get it wrong so you can see what it's like when it's wrong. Right.
Jeez, that's the
Now I've got
excuse
that
he gives
nipped
me all
up.
the time.
Okay. It works. You think, oh, that's all right. But if you hold that, you see, that's not down to the stop. So the gold roll bar is not
Wow,
tweaked.
so that's how you know if it's tweaked
That's
badly.
right. So, to get that one down, you can either adjust this roll bar or this roll bar by the inner settings.
You don't want bounce on it, do
No, you want it down to the stop. So I can
Yeah,
bring that
yeah,
down.
but you don't want that bounce.
No, you want them both down to at the front there. If you have a look inside, there are two stops. There's one stop there and one stop there. They're set. That's what you set the axle heights with.
Okay.
And then you need this coming down on both stops equally, so you have to tweak the roll
Which is
bar.
why you set the axle heights before the front
That's
roll bar.
right, that's right. So I need to bring that one down. There's bounce and I don't want. So if I undo this one, okay.
Okay, so you don't undo that side.
Well,
to
I'm going to
change-
do this side because it doesn't matter which side you do. I'm going to undo that one.
But then you do up the
and
other
I'm
side.
going to do it at the bottom. Okay. Now, there's no bounce now.
And is it the same on
Now,
the other side?
There's no
or
bounce
how?
on the other side. Okay, so now we need to lift to see that's lifting up instantly. So the minute I lift that, the left-hand
So
side
they're
is
both
lifting.
lifting up at the same
And
time.
let's have a look at this one. That one, see there's more play in that one.
So,
Okay, so it's not tweaked yet. This is where I'm
Okay.
tweaking, okay? So there's more play in that one. So effectively this roll bar
but
needs to come down a bit.
fair enough. But okay, we've changed some of the ball joints. But if somebody's ball joints have
if your ball
play,
joints are worn,
is that going to
yeah,
affect it?
it's going to be very hard
Okay.
to tweak. So I need to just tweak this. You're only talking a fraction. I'm going to make sure this side is locked up because I'm doing all the tweaking on the one side at the moment. So I'm just going to make sure this is completely locked up. I just need to drop this. Now you're talking a tiny, tiny amount. Literally moving it half a mil, undo it half a mil. And then do it at the top like that. And now, there, you don't have as much play there now. And that one, that's equal. So now I've got the same amount of, I've got about a mil movement up before the left-hand side lifts.
Okay.
And on this side, I've got about a mil moving up before the right-hand one. So now
Okay.
it's tweaked.
Yep.
There's no play. So that roll bar now is perfectly set. Hi, right, okay, so after we finish the whole of the front end, which we're happy with now, we're now going to the rear end. Same procedure, we're going to check I've checked the camber. Now, on the camber on the rear, factory recommendation is negative 2.5 degrees. Now, we've used that all year. Some people, in some cases, you can go to negative 3. It's only a matter of taking out the shim to bring it into negative 3. We're running negative 2.5. This is preset, it never changes throughout the year while we're using it. So the axle heights on the rear, we're going to run to 65. So I'm just going to check to make sure they're equal. I'm going to go to 65.5 because it just gives us a starting point. They're equal. 65.52. 0.2 is not going to make any difference. So, again, that's touching nicely. Same the other side. So they are absolutely equal. Again, I've done it with the roll bar disconnected. So I know that it's down to the stops on both sides. So
the stops on the rear being located.
The stops on the rear are located one just there.
Where that bolt is heading
Just below
underneath
the bolt, yes.
Yep.
And one just there. Point it out.
Yep.
Just there. They're the stops. So that's set. So now we set the rear roll bar and tweak it. Now the rear roll bar is slightly different to the front in the sense there is no adjustment on the inside. All the adjustment, as you can see, is done on the outside screws.
Okay.
And that's how you tweak it. The roll bar for softness and hardness is done through here. And you can undo those two and slide the plate. If it's slid out the whole way, it's on the softest. If it's a whole way in, it's on the hardness.
And you always have the rear cup and the bar put into each other, or do you sometimes have a...
You always have them put into each other. The only time I ever move those out is if it's wet, I disconnect the rear roll bar.
Okay.
To make sure they're equal, to make sure it's in the centre. Now I'm running on the stiffest setting for the 4mm roll bar. So to make sure they're in the middle, the equal amount. So you put it. You don't go all the way in. You want to go back a little bit. You can see that you don't go all the way in because it can bind. So you come back a little bit, and then to make sure they're equal, what we do.
Measure the distance on the end bar.
What I'm going to do is just measure that distance to make sure it's exactly the same. So I'm going to make sure this side's the same, which it isn't. That roll bar now is exactly the same on both sides. Okay, so what we do with the rear roll bar, similar to the front, but we've only got two. We just nip up the two outside ones on both sides. Now, I'm going to do this up tight because you need to get a good fitting point. And, right, now to tweak the rear roll bar, they're both down to the stop. Because it's a 4mm bar, there's more flex in the rear roll bar, so you need to judge that it's equal on both sides. So we're coming up about, you see how much it's moving before?
I was just going to say, that's a noticeable difference compared to the front at least.
That's right, because it's a softer roll bar.
Okay.
Now we're coming up, see, that much before the left-hand side lifts. Okay?
Yeah.
I want the same on this side. I lift this one. That's actually, believe it or not,
that's actually not
it's
far
actually
off.
pretty good. That was a good guess. If anything, I think that one's a fraction higher. So that one's having to be lifted up higher. So I need to bring that bend roll bar down a bit. So to bring that roll down a bit, I need to bring that up. So I just loosen that just a small amount, very, very small amount, and then tighten the bottom.
It's really as little as just
very,
that small
very small
amount?
amount. Yes. There, that's perfect now.
And again, you know that. Will you also have a bit of push down if it's set wrong, like the front?
No,
or?
because it's spongy. The weight of the rear end is going to keep it to the stops.
Okay.
So it's going to always hit the stops anyway.
Yeah. But the important part is the distance of the bar and then the lift.
That's
up.
right. Yeah. To make sure the bar is equal, then you know it's exactly the same on both sides.
Okay.
Okay, so after we've done the axle heights and the setting tuning of the roll bars, I've put all the shock absorbers on with fresh oil, front and rear, and I've put 4 brand new tyres on because I want to check now the toe out at the front and the toe in at the rear.
Is there any reason why you put new tyres on?
Yeah, because it makes it, you know, they're going to be equal. It's going to be the best you can. You still have to check the tyres, make sure they're not too warped, because being plastic rings, sometimes they're warped. Front isn't as important as a rear, which I will explain. To do the front, what I do first of all is I set the radio to the 0 point and set the servo saver to the 0 point. And what I'm looking for, what we're using, again, it's up to personal preference, but we're using 130 millimeters
on the side.
On
now,
the toe out.
What does a toe out on the front difference wise?
The more toe out gives you more stable in a straight line.
Okay.
But it also makes you a fraction slower.
Okay.
Now, what I'm setting this at 100. Right, on our M.S.R toe-in tool, I'm setting it at 132 millimeter on the toe out, which is actually not a lot. A lot of people are running 122, which is quite a lot of toe out, but we found we can have less toe out. The car's still stable, and it just gives you more speed down the straight. So with everything in the centre, we're going off there, which is good, and then this side, which is there. So that is equal. Now, if you find that it's not equal, if you find that one side isn't more than the other, you adjust them by the steering rods. You loosen those and adjust it each until they're both exactly the same and lock it up.
Where do you put the
just across
on the
just
tire?
Across the tire, just above the centre, because the wheel that will actually rock on that. So you need to go just above. Okay.
No problem.
Once I've done the toe out on the front, I'll just check the steering travel to make sure it's equal.
That's checking the distance between the top rods to the wishbone, yeah?
That's right, yeah, just to make sure we've got equal travel either side. Now, as it happens, we could do it a bit more there. That's quite a large gap. So I don't like it touching. I like to allow about a 5mm gap. So I will change that on the radio. That's pretty equal. Okay, so I've now set that on the radio. I'm happy with the toe out. I'm happy with the throw of the steering. Obviously, when you're on the track, you'll have to fine tune because some track, depending on the camber,
Depending on the camber of the track,
you have to set it.
Yeah,
but,
I know that.
I always have it plugged in for doing the toe out, obviously, because if you don't, it's going to move when you're trying to measure it. So you're getting the full point there. Okay, so now we're going to the back of the car to set the toe in on the rear, and as a start point I'm going to set the M.S.R toe-in tool at 125 millimeters.
Of course, it can vary based on track, your setup to begin with, adjusting it, so on and so forth. But yeah,
it's true. I just find it a very good start base.
Yeah.
Now, as these come from the factory, when you go down, it's a toe out. When you go up, it's a toe in. So it's easy. They're both the same.
So down and out.
Down and out, up and in. Yes. And what we're looking for is a measurement between those two blue screws.
Okay.
That's what we're looking for. Now, this is more crucial in the front end, so that's actually pretty good, but the tyre isn't perfect, so I always do a number of twists and check it and get an average.
Again, it's also why you use new tyres as well.
That's right. Again, as you can see now, that's actually away, because the tyre is never exact. Now, some people have set up discs, which is a little bit easier. I'm going to get an average now. That's too far.
And is that also, you also set the bar going across just above the middle?
Above the middle.
Okay.
And again, I'm going to get, just going to get an average. So that's a little bit too far in. Yeah. See, that's too far out. So the average there is about right. So that's 125 millimeters. Now I do exactly the same with this one.
The biggest thing is the balance between each side, because if you have one side wrong, it creates a crabbing effect.
That's right, and then your steering will be wrong. So if you change the rear, I need to go in a bit there. If you change the rear toe in, you find that you're having to adjust your steering. It means that your rear toe in isn't equal.
Okay, and just to show you the position.
See there, it's just a bit too much, but turn the wheel there, turn the wheel, and it's away. So halfway point is 125. So that's absolutely equal. And what you can do, another little check, which is a good way of testing, is that if you check your front wheels, okay, against the back, you see the gap there, okay, that's your toe out, so the rear of the front is in. If you go the other side, so you can see that's pretty much equally exactly the same. Okay, that shows we've got toe out. If I then go to the middle, as you can see, the inside edge is to the middle of, exactly in the middle of the front tyre. And then if we go the other side, you'll find it's exactly the same. And it never changes. It's the 125 is approximately the middle of the front when it's set at 0 camber. It can change, obviously the camber will change, but that's the most accurate way of setting the car. That now will run dead straight, and that's now how you do the basic setup of the car after a complete rebuild.